everyone. So I think Steve did quite a good introduction, and as he intimated, I'm you know quite hooked by everything that's happened in Ukraine. So Steve's absolutely right. I did go to Ukraine. Initially, I was only going to be there for 2 months, and that was May 22, and then return to the UK, pick up my motorbike, spend 3 months motorcycling. Well, the motorcycling never happened. Ukraine got under my skin. I met up with and was working with a bunch of Ukrainians helping Ukrainians, about 60 or 70 of them. And after the 2 months, it seemed totally frivolous to leave them just to go motorcycling. I couldn't do it. And then in the end, I spent 6 months with them. And I promised to return again the following year, which was 2023. So I did another stint of 6 months. And I'm returning to the team in April this year in 2 months' time. So that's the extent to which this bunch of Ukrainians helping Ukrainians has got under my skin. One of the most fantastic elements is the amount of support that New Dawn, the group that I was with, has got from Rotary. It's been absolutely phenomenal what Rotarians in South Australia have done. And so I'm very, very pleased to be here today to be able to talk to you and give you a little bit of a background on my experience, what's happening in Ukraine, what it's like there, and the things that Rotary have been able to do in Ukraine, in the people that we've been helping. Now, I'm going to rush through this fairly quickly because 20 minutes is very short time to really talk about something I could talk about for 2 hours nonstop. So, but I'm going to do my talk mostly with the aid of some videos and some photos on the basis a picture tells 1,000 words. So I don't need to talk. You can get the image yourself. Now, I was based in Odessa, so you can see the map there. You can see Odessa. People have heard about Kherson and about the Russian front lines. So the area that we were primarily operating in was actually in the Kherson region. So you can see Mykolaiv there. Mykolaiv was what was called the shield of Odessa. So the Russians actually got to Mykolaiv. They needed to break through Mykolaiv to reach Odessa. And this was at the outbreak of the war. They failed to take Mykolaiv. The shield held firm, and the front line for a long time was about halfway between Mykolaiv and Kherson. So the first time I was in Ukraine, we reached out to what we called the forgotten villages, which were to the east of Mykolaiv. November 22, the Ukrainians had a push. They pushed through to Kherson, liberated Kherson. And the second time I was there last year, most of the aid that we were providing was still to our forgotten villages, but these were now the villages that had been occupied. We heard very little about that war in the news. You had the idea that the Dnieper River, that the Ukrainians with HIMARS were destroying the bridge, that it was all about logistics and the Russians were being squeezed out. The reality was it was a very bloody war. The Russians held on to what they had tooth and nail, and the Ukrainians had to prize them out village by village, town by town. So just as background, and again, I'm just going to show you this to give you a sense of what the terrain there in the area around Kherson looks like. You see this little place just here called Stanislav. Okay, the video I'm going to show you is the approach to Stanislav and Stanislav itself. So I have a bit of a problem with the volume, but you get the picture, so to speak. Uh, and in the village itself, or the town itself, every house without exception, is destroyed or damaged. So this is just one example, but the entire region there comprises of villages like this one. Now, most of the population had actually left. Most of the population fled to Ukraine, so that a typical community, which might have been 2,000 people before the war, could have had as few as 200 people there during the period of the occupation. And we saw a lot of those refugees in Odessa because at our hub, we were providing 100 food packs a day, and each food pack was sufficient for two people for 5 days. And we do, as I said, 100 a day. And we saw them. We saw these people when they came from Mykolaiv, they came from Kherson, they came from Mariupol, they came from the Donbass. They passed through our doors, and we helped them prior to the time that we were going to these forgotten villages and actually providing the assistance direct. I've got a few photos here of the extent of the damage. This is just a snapshot of the damage. As I said, every single village was fought through, but every public building was destroyed. So all the hospitals, all the schools, all the administrative buildings were destroyed. So this was one of the schools. That was another school. That's another school. That was a public administrative building. That is in Kherson. Sorry, that was in Mykolaiv itself. And unfortunately, we don't have the volume, but I can quickly explain. So this is Julia. Julia is the person that headed up and still heads up the team of Ukrainians helping Ukrainians. She's quite an extraordinary young woman, only 34 years old, and is growing old before her time with the responsibilities that she has, faced and the things that she's put up with. This school is in Nova Dolina. Hold that thought, because one of the things that Rotary doing is actually has done is help the school kids in Nova Dolina. This school here was targeted by a Russian aerial bomb. Just one bomb took out the whole school. So it gives you an indication of the devastation that Russian bombs can cause and are continuing to cause every single day. Um, Rotary got involved. I mean, Steve was fantastic. Chap called Tim Mee got involved, and there's just a fantastic committee representing 6 of the different clubs in Rotary. Got together and said, "What can we do to help?" And that was the beginning of the Rotary New Dawn partnership. Now, I'm a self-funded volunteer. I'm there with New Dawn. I am part of New Dawn, but at the same time, I'm also a donor. So I straddle both sides of the fence, and I understand where both sides sort of come from. And so it's important to me that with donors, that every single cent is really well spent and is directed to where it really needs to go and can make the best outcome for the people there. So I'm going to talk to you about probably the key single initiative that Rotary, through Rotary District 9510, did. Now, I've highlighted here a place called Visakapelia. Visakapelia absolutely encapsulates one of our forgotten villages. And just as an aside, in the 6 months that I spent in this area last year, with all those schools, all those hospitals, all that destruction, in those entire 6 months, I only saw one school that had somebody entering some sort of semblance of trying to repair the school, where there's some people trying to fix the roof, which was completely destroyed. So that's the only instance I saw in that whole time about someone trying to fix something. Ukraine simply doesn't have the money to do that. The EU and the US before was supplying funds which allowed Ukraine to continue to exist. So salaries are paid. You've still got doctors, you've still got nurses, you've still got teachers, their salaries are being paid. There's a lot of aid in terms of military aid coming through, but absolutely nothing for any sort of reconstruction or repair. One of the things we did was, this is through New Dawn, we went to the Kherson military authorities who are in charge of all civil administration. And so the health authorities were underneath the military administration. And we said to them, look, Rotary in South Australia want to help, they want to do something. What is the most pressing need? And without hesitation, they said Viscopillia. So Viscopillia, you can see on the map, there's actually no major town around it. It is really isolated. But Viscopillia was absolutely fought through. So the front lines were to the northeast of Viscopillia. So Viscopillia was Russian occupied. And the Ukrainians fought through Viscopillia to liberate that as they then moved towards Kherson. The hospital was completely destroyed, and the Kherson military authority said, "Look, before the war, the hospital it serviced a population of 12,000 people. So it was Viscopillia plus the outlying villages. The hospital was destroyed, so there were no medical services at all. But they said, look, there's still doctors and there's still nurses there. So we have the capacity to help these people, but we have no medical place for them to be able to operate out of, well, literally and figuratively. So I said, what can you do? Can you help Viscopillia? The chaps at New Dawn reached out to the senior doctor in Viscopillia, said, look, Rotary from South Australia, they want to help. How can we help? They said, look, we have 4 doctors, we have about 8 nurses that we have here. Ideally, we'd like to have, if we could possibly get some demountable medical centers, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I'd like to say, when I look back, that Rotary did provide 3 medical centers which are on the ground, they're working, and I'll show you a video of them at the moment. Most of the population did flee. At the moment, there are about 6,500 people there in the area, and this medical center is working. It is providing basic medical services for 6,500 people. Without this, it would not be happening. And it really would not be happening. This was the hospital, totally destroyed. And unfortunately, I don't have the sound, but let me just play the video. So it shows you, it just shows you the medical facilities working, well, operating and working. We didn't skimp. We didn't skimp on the funding. Médecins Sans Frontières, we had a little clash with them in another little village called Plavdine, where Plavdine was where we go into our first medical center. We were gazumped by MSF. We were going to provide one of these demountables, no expense spared, so the insulation, good 6 inches thick, lead light, double glazing, and MSF, a week before we delivered ours, they got wind of it and delivered a essentially shipping container with windows and said, here we are, we have delivered a medical center. What Rotary provided was just chalk and cheese, different, something which can be used afterwards for many, 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 many years. So we have these 3 centers. You can see they are working. They are providing those medical facilities. I'll just play it so you can just finish. It's a shame I haven't got sound, but you're not missing much because at the moment, when this was taken, there was no electricity, but we had the generator working at full blast. So all you'd be able to hear now is the generator noise, and I could try to mime that, but don't worry, I won't. All right, so we can have a little bit of volume. So that was the medical centers. Um, I talked about Trinova Dolina a little bit earlier, you know, the school that had been hit by an aerial bomb. One of the things that we would do at New Dawn is we'd reach out and we would have children's fairs, kids' fairs. And one of our volunteers in the previous life before the war was a professional children's magician. So we would roll him out and we'd take him to these villages and have a kids' fair. We would also take that opportunity with a captive audience to do mine awareness training, which is, of course, very, very important as well. Um, Look at the building behind. This was the community center. Remember, I showed you the video of the school completely destroyed. For $2,400, this is one of the projects that District 9510 was engaged in. And for $2,500, we fixed that up so these children here can go to school in the building behind. And that is now the new school, which was the community center. But you can see that was quite damaged, but it was still structurally sound. Again, without Rotary's money, that would not have happened. It actually amazes me how little money there is, even to do something that only costs a couple of $1,000s. It just isn't done. Let me just play this video for you. It's better with louder volume, but again, it will give you a sense of, uh, well, kids are kids everywhere. But you have to imagine what they've been through in that occupied area. You know, the trauma that many of them will have suffered. Almost every building in the village is damaged. And that's inside of the building. We got that photograph a couple of weeks ago. So it is now working. So those kids can now go back to school and get an education. You can see the heating isn't on yet, but I think by now, you know, it probably is. And it wasn't just fixing the windows and doing some bare minimum to get it back in order, but we also, through Rotary, were able to have a lot of school materials as well. And as one of the teachers said, this is even better than what we had before the war because we had nothing like this in the past. Um, so I've run through my presentation fairly quickly. I'm trying to be within the 20 minutes. But I hope you can get a sense of the environment that exists there, uh, and B, the need that exists there, but C, also a partial solution. And that partial solution is what Rotary District 9510 has provided in spades. And again, I think from the perspective of the team I'm with, Ukrainians, the people that we go out and speak to, it is enormously morale boosting for them to know that there is a community that is the other side of the world and is prepared to help, uh, you know, the people, who really are the forgotten villagers. And that's what Rotary is providing. And we're doing a push at the moment to all the clubs to encourage people there to support that New Dawn Rotary partnership because it really is delivering on the ground and to people who would otherwise simply not get that assistance. Just not, they would not be getting that assistance. So, and I'm also here really to thank everybody that has assisted so far, and just to reassure you that every dollar there goes a long way. Nothing is wasted because New Dawn is, as part of the partnership, is there organizing everything on the ground. The person that I'm dealing with those demountable medical centers, Victor, he's a builder by trade, and so he is able to deal with the Ukrainian counterparts and make sure that everything is done properly and at the most cost-effective manner. So it is a great project. And when I talk at the annual meeting in Loxton in March, which I will be, one of the things I'll be talking about is how, as a case study, how that partnership and the involvement of everybody has excelled and really is a perfect case study in how Rotary and an organization on the ground can work fantastically well to deliver a fabulous result. But again, most important thing is to thank everybody here who has and will contribute.